Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov, and welcome to our Tanya class, Tanya and You Chapter 12, Part 2. That's where we're up to. We are in just about halfway through Chapter 12. It's a fascinating chapter, and a lot of like the central ideas of the Tanya really find themselves and are brought up for the first time in this chapter, Chapter 12, the chapter where we begin speaking about the Beinoni, right? The middle type of person, the in-betweener, the person, the human being who we all strive and aspire to be. That's the Beinoni. It's not easy, but it's attainable. It's possible. So we started talking about the Beinoni. We explained the reason why we refer to it as in the in-betweener is because they are no average person, but they are in between their internally with their internal struggle. They are in between. In other words, they are not a tzaddik. A tzaddik of the Tanya is someone who has completely eradicated, transformed their negative side. They don't have any urge, temptation. They don't have that inner struggle. That's a tzaddik. That's someone special. That's not the average person. Then you have the Russia, where we said the Russia is the one who maybe that would be a little better. The Russia is the one who does have the internal struggle, and the struggle is strong enough where we fail from time to time. Now, the time to time, right, is a very large and far spectrum, right? It could be time to time on a daily basis, it could be time to time on a yearly basis. But the point is that their behamis, the animalistic side, once in a while takes control over them, the thought, speech, and action. Like we said, most of us, I would assume, are in this category, the category of a Russia. The Beinoni is someone very unique. Internally, they have the struggle, but they always win. They always win. They're always able to overcome. They have that strength, that inner strength, where they're always able to tell these urges, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to speak that. I'm not even going to actively think that. That's the Beinoni. And last time, 2 weeks ago, when we spoke at the beginning of chapter 12, we started talking about the various skills that the Beinoni needs. And the first thing that we said was the daily inspiration. The Beinoni knows that just because I was inspired yesterday, I was inspired a week ago, I was inspired at the rabbi's sermon on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, it doesn't mean today, 6 months later, I'm going to be inspired. The Beinoni knows we need daily inspiration. And the daily inspiration comes in the form of prayer. Morning prayer. Every morning when we sit and we pray the morning prayers, the Beinoni isn't just saying words. The Beinoni is contemplating. The Beinoni has that mind, he's been very mindful and very aware of where they are and who they're speaking to. And it's a mental exercise to remind the Beinoni, what am I doing here today? What am I going to accomplish? What's my mission? Being very mission oriented. We spoke about for each and every one of us, where we also do prayer, to take time. Maybe it could be during our prayer, it could be maybe during our morning coffee, to think about, how is my day going to go today? Am I going to be a good spouse? Am I going to be a good parent? Am I going to be a good child? What's my relationship with God going to look like today? If we do this every single day, daily inspiration, our day will look so differently. What happens with our prayer, unfortunately, or fortunately, for those of us who pray every single day, which it becomes like a habit, becomes like a nature. I heard this term yesterday. I never knew that was an official term. It's called highway hypnosis. Have you heard that before? And I suffer from highway hypnosis pretty often, actually. Highway hypnosis is when you drive the same route every day, where it's like automatic. It's on autopilot almost, even though not obviously you're sitting behind the wheel and you are making those turns, but it just automatically, your mind may be drifting about thinking about something else, and you're not paying attention on a conscious level to what's happening around you. You're driving for a half hour, and before you turn around, like, we're here. I don't remember taking the exit. I don't remember turning. I don't remember what happened for the last half hour. I was daydreaming, but our mind was like almost in like hypnotized, where we just did it automatically because we're so used to it. Sometimes our prayer, we're saying the same thing every morning. We're opening the prayer book, saying the prayers. It's like automatic. We have to take the time to shut that to get out of our hypnosis and to be mindful, to have the proper intent, to know what we're saying, who we're talking to. We're standing before God. Daily inspiration. So that was skill number one that the Beinoni has, which is very relatable to us as well. Today we'll go on to skill number two. Skill number two, the Tanya says, is mind over heart. The mind controls the heart. The Beinoni knows the human condition. The Beinoni is able to tap in to this nature. And the Tanya breaks it down into two. There is the human nature, unrelated to godliness, unrelated to godly soul, spirituality, the simple human nature. And then there is also an added benefit when we're talking about godly soul over animal soul, light over darkness. So this is how he develops it. And this is powerful. This is something, such a foundational idea in Hasidic teachings. Mind controls the heart. And this is the nature of the human being. Unlike some of us feel and think that our heart controls us, the Tanya tells us it's human nature that we have the ability to control ourselves, to control our hearts. And this is what is unique about a human being. They say it's an interesting story. They say about Maimonides, where Maimonides and some of the other philosophers of his time had this debate, had this argument, whether you can truly train and transform the nature of an animal. The Maimonides held it can't happen. An animal, it remains an animal. The other philosophers, they say, you know what? That's not true. If you train them well, if you know how you're doing, if you're a skillful trainer, you could train an animal to change their nature. Okay. So he said, you know what? He challenged them. He said, you know what? Show me. Let me see. No problem. 6 months later, they say, okay, Rambam, Maimonides, you're invited to a party. We're having dinner. You know who the waiters will be? Cats. We trained cats to wait the tables. Wow, amazing. I'm coming. And so they're at this dinner and they open the door, and lo and behold, there is a group of cats standing on 2 feet, holding these trays in their hands, and they're walking to each table and delivering food to these tables. Wow, amazing. Look at what they were able to do. They were able to train these cats to be like human beings, to walk onto and to wait the tables. And while they're all enjoying this, Maimonides takes a little bag out of his pockets, a little box in it. And lo and behold, what is in this box? It's a mouse. He lets out the mouse. The second the mouse is out of the box, what happens? All the cats drop their trays and chase the mouse. And Maimonides says, that's my point. You can train them temporarily. You haven't truly trained and changed their nature. In other words, like this, an animal is an animal. They have a nature. You can train them here and there. Ultimately, it's their heart, it's their emotions, it's their impulses that are in control. That's not a human being. The Tanya says a human being is not just a sophisticated animal. A human being is a whole different category. A human being, by nature, has the control over themselves. They could change themselves. Their heart is not the drive. It should not be the drive. It doesn't have to be the drive. It's the mind over heart. We have control over ourselves. We can't blame, what should I do? This is the way I felt. I couldn't control myself. It's even in Jewish law. The law is Adam mu'ad le'olam. A human being is always responsible. You can't say, well, what can I do? I had this urge, I had this temptation. No, you're responsible over yourself because you could control yourself. Now, we're not talking about some severe cases. People have some chemical imbalances. We're not talking about severe cases, but a healthy human being is able, has the ability to control themselves. Use your mind. If it's wrong, if you know it's wrong, you have the ability to control your heart. And this is true in not just the religious areas. You're on a diet, trying to be careful with what I eat. And then you say, I have such a craving for this tub of ice cream. Okay. So you haven't lost control. Sometimes you decide to give up control. Doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to control yourself. It may be hard. I'm not saying it's always easy, but the human condition is a healthy human being is able to control themselves. The Tanya says the animal soul is in the heart. The animal is very short-sighted. The animal wants pleasure, self-centeredness, wants to feel good. That's the heart. Don't let that control you. The godly soul is in our minds. That's where its headquarters are. It knows what's right. It has an edge over this battle. And although internally there may be a struggle, don't be short-sighted. We have the ability to control ourselves. Live like a human being, Tanya says. Take control. In today's society, it's out the window. It's all about whatever feels good, whatever makes you happy. Tanya says there's right and there's wrong, and that's the heart and the mind over the heart. We have the ability to tell ourselves, no, I want this, but it's wrong, and therefore I won't do it. That's what the Beinoni knows. You know, they say the story with Alexander the Great, who was once, he was served dinner, soup, and there was a fly in his soup. And he was outraged. What's going on to me? A fly in my soup. This is terrible. The waiter says, Alexander, you're able to conquer the world. You can't conquer yourself. You can't control yourself. So you're angry. Control yourself. Something happens at home and you want to have an outburst of anger. Control yourself. If you see something and you're jealous, you covet, wow, I wish I could have that. Or you feel greedy, you could control yourself. You could control yourself. You have the ability to control. Of course, when it comes to actions, when it comes to what you say, what you don't say, what you think, what you don't think, control yourself. So this is the human condition. And the Beinoni is able to tap into a healthy human being, moach shalit al halev, in the words of the Tanya. The mind controls your heart. And I think we could all think back to a moment where we kind of lost ourselves. Recently, thank God, a lot of kids at home, and sometimes it's lively at home. And sometimes you get frustrated. Frustrated. And you kind of let it out. Then you think to yourself, why did I have to do that? Why did I have to allow my animal soul to take control over me? I could control myself. I have the ability to overcome, like the time that the Mishnah tells us. Who is strong? The one who's able to overcome their urges. That's strength, and that's possible. The other side of the coin of taking control over self, mind over heart, is the idea of light over darkness, when we know that's not just with all areas in life. This is the nature of the human being. And Tanya says so much more so when we're talking about godly soul over animal soul. When we're talking about light over darkness. There, our edge is so much greater and so much stronger. There, the odds are fully stacked in our favor. So, the Tanya introduces a verse from, I believe it is Ecclesiastes, from King Solomon. And we know that King Solomon was the wisest of all men. So whatever he says, it must be very wise, right? So the Tanya tries to understand what exactly is the depth of this statement from King Solomon. And this statement is that King Solomon says that I've seen that there is an advantage to wisdom over foolishness, just as there is an advantage of a light over darkness. Wow, sophisticated. What is King Solomon telling us? I mean, of course, wisdom has an advantage over foolishness, like light and we need an analogy. Let me think of an analogy to better explain the idea of why wisdom has an advantage over foolishness, like light over darkness. What is King Solomon telling us? It seems like an elementary idea. So Tanya breaks it down beautifully. And this almost became today like a cliche. People don't even know where the source of this is. It's the Tanya, chapter 12. And he kind of breaks it down into 3 points. He says, you want to know the advantage of foolishness, the wisdom over foolishness? Take light and darkness. Let's analyze light and darkness. Light and darkness are two forces battling each other. Break it down into 3 things over here. First of all, who will win? What is the advantage that light has over darkness? Who will win the battle when there's light and there's darkness? Who wins? Always light wins. If there's a light, it dissipates the darkness. There's no such thing. Well, it was so dark. It was so dark that even the light of a candle, even the light wasn't able to bring light to the darkness. No, light always wins darkness. That's point number 1. Point number 2. Is it an equal battle? How much volume of darkness and volume of light do you need to battle each other? And here's the cliche, right? A little light dispels a lot of darkness. That's chapter 12, right over here. That's the source of it. In other words, like this: if you have a hot pot of water and you put in an ounce of cold water, how much hot water does that displace? It's proportionate. That amount, an ounce of cold water, right? That volume amount is what it affects on the hot water. So you have a room filled with darkness. You light a little candle, it should dispel a little bit of light. Nope, that's not what happens. A small little candle lights up the entire room. Disproportionately. That's what King Solomon says. A little light, that's all you need. All you need is a little bit of light, and all the darkness is dissipates. And point number 3 is you don't fight darkness with sticks. It happens simultaneously, immediately, seamlessly. You light the candle, you bring in the light, automatically it dissipates. And this is what King Solomon is telling us. If you want to control darkness, foolishness, negativity, our animal soul, in addition to the human condition of mind over heart, it's also light over darkness. And therefore, sometimes you may get overwhelmed. You may feel like, how can I do this? It's so scary. Know your strength. Know your power. It's light and darkness. Once you start dealing with the darkness, you realize there's nothing to it. There's no meat. It dissipates. Sometimes you feel like, how could I even approach this issue? But when you start, you realize, you know what? It wasn't so difficult. The light kind of just dispelled the darkness. So this is the skill of the second skill of the Beinoni. He knows the human condition, and the Beinoni also knows that when you're talking about godliness, spirituality, good, light over darkness, the battle is so much easier. So he taps in to his strength. He taps into this. That is the skill. So in addition to the daily inspiration, he also has the idea of mind over heart. Control yourself. Don't let the darkness control you. You take control. You could say no. And if you have the confidence and you're willing to go into that battle, the Beinoni succeeds. With that inspiration, he's strong-willed and he is successful. So the last section of the chapter, last section of chapter 12, finishes off with the idea that once we know the two skills that the Beinoni has, and this is his success story, it's also important for the Beinoni to know who they aren't, who they are and who they aren't. The Beinoni, although sounds like a very lofty type of person, right? And they definitely are. Someone who is in full control over their thought, speech, and action. But the Beinoni is not a tzaddik. We spoke in chapter 10. A tzaddik is someone who has actually transformed themselves internally. They don't have that challenge. They don't have that temptation. They don't have that battle within. The Beinoni is someone who hasn't transformed themselves. All they have done is they have suppressed, but it's still there. Just now, the last few months, we're thinking about what's going on in Israel, and with the war in Gaza against Hamas, and what are the objectives of the war? What is the goals of the war? And what they're saying is we want to eradicate Hamas, right? Eradicate this terrorism. But what does that mean? Does that mean to truly eradicate them, or does that mean that they shouldn't have the ability to attack? We should feel safe in Israel. So the tzaddik was able to eradicate. We got rid of Hamas. We got rid of our animal soul. The Beinoni was not able to do that, but the Beinoni feels safe in a way where they know that it won't take control over us. We'll have the inner struggle, but we're strong enough to overcome. So when we have a temptation to do something wrong, to break our diet, to do an act which we know is coming from the animal soul, the Beinoni takes control over themselves. I'm stronger than that. I could control myself. When it comes to speech, I want to say something. It's going to be funny, but it may be shameful, it may embarrass someone. It may not be proper thing to say, but I have an urge. The Beinoni is able to control themselves. Don't say it. When it comes to thoughts, and here's the time you elaborate a little bit about thoughts, where the Beinoni also has control over their thoughts. Now, sometimes we think about thoughts. Is thoughts a behavior? Right? We know that there's three garments to the soul, the way our soul expresses itself with thought, speech, and action. The Beinoni also has control over their thoughts. In other words, like this. There is intellect and there's thoughts. And we often confuse the two, but they're not exactly the same. And we spoke about this briefly in chapter 3 when we spoke about, or chapter 4, 3 and 4, when we spoke about the difference between intellect and thoughts. For example, an example of intellect. Let's say 2 plus 2 is 4. That's intellect. Do we understand that? Yes. Intellect is the way we understand things, the way we process things. Now, do I need to be thinking about 2 plus 2 is 4 every day? No. It's my intellect. It's stored away. I know that 2 plus 2 is 4. Every once in a while, it comes up. But I don't have to be actively thinking about it. But it's my intellect. Then we have 2 plus 2 is 5. Could we think that? We can think that. Could we understand it intellectually? I hope not. So there's thoughts. I can think about anything. I can think about a flying cow. I can think about anything. It may not be realistic. It may not be rational or intellectual, but I can think about it. So there's a difference between our intellect and our thoughts. The animal soul has its intellect, the way it processes things, how it understands things, very much controlled by the heart. The godly soul has its intellect, the way it processes things, the way it understands things. These are intellects that are in the kind of somewhere stored away. What are we thinking about? Which one has an active control over our mind when we think? Active thinking. The Benoni has control over its active thinking. When thoughts come to our mind is always moving, right? It's always rushing. There are always thoughts in our mind. Every once in a while, we notice, wait, I'm thinking about this. So now it's a deliberate thought. It's an active thought. I'm allowing my mind to think about this topic. Is it these thoughts, are they stemming from the godly soul or the animals? And here the Benoni can take control. And the term that the Tanya uses beautifully is that the moment that the Benoni realizes that these thoughts are coming from his animal side, he takes his 2 hands and he pushes them away. That's the Benoni, control even over our thoughts. And thoughts are important. The Torah puts a strong emphasis not only on our action and our speech, but also our thoughts. From the 10 Commandments, don't covet. What's the difference? I'm not doing anything. No one knows. I'm a good person. But I'm thinking about something that I shouldn't be thinking about. I'm jealous. Why does this person have so much success and I don't? I want what they have. These thoughts are sinful. Now, thoughts come to our mind all the time. We don't always have control. But the moment we take note of these thoughts, we say, stop, don't think. Don't even go there. Don't allow your mind to think. Think about something else. Distract your mind. You're about to get angry. You're thinking about something and the thoughts are angry thoughts. Stop. Don't think. Don't think about that. Don't allow these thoughts into your mind. That's the Benoni. It isn't easy. We're not saying it's easy. We'll learn in chapter 14 how to become a Benoni. But now we're trying to understand what is a Benoni. Who is this Benoni? The Benoni is someone who has full control over themselves. Their action, their speech, and even their thoughts. They have an internal struggle. They haven't changed themselves. They haven't changed their personalities. They have the urge. They have the temptations every single day. But through these 2 skills, 2 very important skills, the skill of daily inspiration and the skill of knowing that we have the ability to control ourselves in general, and especially when it comes to light over darkness, through these skills, he's able to control and overpower these temptations and always win the battle. And that is chapter 12. I'll leave you with that. And next week, we should be able to continue with chapter 13 as we continue elaborating with this battle and who controls the Benoni, as we see in chapter 13. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sorry about the original technical issues that we had, but I think it was resolved.